You planning on sleeping through my class, Mitchell? Mrs. Hartwell's heels clicked against the track like gunshots .8 inches tall, those things that I'd seen her run in them. She could probably teach a masterclass in power walking while verbally eviscerating students. I tried to stand, but my knees buckled. The pain in my chest was spreading down my left arm now, which was bad. That was the kind of bad my cardiologist had drawn diagrams for. The pain will feel like pressure, he'd said, like someone sitting on your chest if it moves to your arm. You call 911 immediately. Do you understand, Leah? I understood. I just couldn't call. My phone was in my gym bag on the bleachers, and Mrs. Hartwell was standing over me with that look on her face. The one that said I was wasting her time. Up. Now. Mrs. Hartwell, I have medication. In my pocket. If you could just... Medication. She laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that had no warmth in it. You know how many times I've heard that excuse. I have asthma, I have a headache. I think I'm going to throw up. And you know what happens every single time? They magically recover the second I say they can sit out. I'm not making this up. My voice was shaking that I could hear it. The fear was making everything worse, which made the pain worse, which made the fear worse. Vicious cycle. I've been riding that well since I was 12. I have a condition, congenital heart defect. It's in my file. The only thing in your file is a history of class participation issues. She jabbed a manicured finger toward the track. 5 laps, that's the assignment. You don't run 5 laps, you fail my class. You fail my class, you lose your scholarship, and we both know you can't afford to lose that scholarship, can you, Leah? I'd never told her about my scholarship. She looked at my file, seen the financial aid notes, made her assumptions, same thing everyone did, same thing Derek did. You're only here because of pity money, he'd said once junior year. My dad pays enough tuition to keep the school running. Want to contribute a sob story? I heard the laughter before I saw them. Derek's crew had wandered over from the basketball courts, still sweaty and loud, and he was right at the front. 6 feet of golden boy arrogance with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that had stopped seeing me about 7 years ago. Sienna was wrapped around his arm like some kind of designer accessory. She was good at that, being decorative. Still playing the victim, Leah? Sienna's voice was honey over broken glass. Honestly, it's getting old. Is she crying? Someone else laughed. I didn't see who. My vision was starting to tunnel. I'm not, I tried. I just need my pills. They're in my jacket pocket, please. I reached for the pocket, and my fingers were clumsy, trembling so bad I could barely find the zipper. But I got it open, got my hand inside, felt the familiar shape of the bottle. The relief was almost enough to make me cry, almost. Then Sienna moved. It wasn't an accident, I watched her do it. Watched her foot come down right on top of my hand, crushing my fingers against the bottle inside. I heard the crack, glass. The sound of my last chance shattering against my own knuckles. Oh no. She stepped back, all wide-eyed innocence. I didn't see you there. Sloppy me. The pills were scattered on the track, white circles in the dust. Sienna's limited edition sneaker came down again, grinding them into the rubber surface like she was putting out a cigarette. Which, in a way, she was putting me out. That's enough. Derek's voice, he was right there now, standing over me with his basketball under one arm. Quit the dramatics and run the laps. You think this is funny, making everyone watch you beg. Please, Derek, I need. I said run. Or are you deaf now too? The pain in my chest exploded. I'd felt it before, but never like this. Never with the full knowledge that I wasn't going to make it. The pills were gone. My phone was gone. There was nothing. Some distant part of my brain remembered the scarf. The one I'd spent 6 weeks on. Derek's birthday was 3 days away, and I wanted to give him something real. Something that proved I knew him. Even if he'd never known me, I'd practice the speech in the mirror. I know I'm not your favorite person, but I made this for you. You don't have to keep it if you don't want. You looked cold. That winter that I remembered. Stupid. So monumentally stupid. He'd hate it. He'd probably throw it in the trash. But it was in my pocket. The scarf and the broken glass and the dust that used to be my heart medication. I pulled it out. Gray wool, uneven stitches, a little lumpy in places where I'd messed up the pattern. It was ugly. It was the best thing I'd ever made. Derek looked down at me and laughed. What the hell is that? You're dying on the ground, and you're pulling out some yarn? Sienna giggled. Is that for me? Leah, that's so sweet, but it's hideous. You should really just throw it away. I didn't throw it away. I held it against my chest because the pain was so bad now I couldn't see straight, and I needed something to hold on to. Something soft. My mother, I said, or tried to say. The words came out thick and wrong. She was a nurse, before she died. She used to. She said scarves keep you warm when your heart hurts. She said, who the hell cares about your dead mom? Derek's voice was so cold it should have frozen the sweat on my face. Get up. I couldn't. I tried, and my body wouldn't obey. I was staring at the sky now, watching the clouds drift past, thinking how nice that would be. T.O., be a cloud. To float wherever the wind took you, and never have to beg anyone for anything ever again. Leah, stay with me. That wasn't Derek. That wasn't anyone I knew. The voice was older, sharper, terrified. Derek's mother, Mrs. Vance. She was there suddenly, her designer heels crossing the track faster than I'd ever seen a woman in heels move, her face gone gray under the expensive makeup. She dropped to her knees beside me and grabbed my wrist, felt for my pulse. I could feel her fingers. The weirdest part was I could feel everything, that I could feel my heart stopping, could feel the blood pooling in my lungs, could feel the light fading out of my eyes. And I could feel her hands shaking as she tried to find something that wasn't there. Call 911. Mrs. Vance screamed at someone. Call 911 right now. Mom, Derek was confused. He had no idea. What are you doing here? Did Leah call you again? I told her to stop. Shut up. Mrs. Vance never talked to Derek like that. Ever. Shut your mouth right now, or I swear to God. Derek. She had paperwork. I gave the school paperwork. I told them. Mom. You're supposed to take care of her. The ambulance arrived. I heard the sirens, heard them clear, but all my attention was on Derek's face. He was angry. He was so angry, like this was another trick, another performance I'd staged to get him in trouble. He was angry, and then he was confused, and then like a house collapsing, he was terrified. No, he said. No, that's not. She's faking. She always fakes. She's been faking since we were kids. Mom, you know she fakes. Her heart stopped, Mrs. Vance said. The words came out flat and broken. Derek, her heart stopped. I could see the paramedics working on me. Chest compressions, shocks. Some kind of injection, then my body was jerking on the track like a puppet with tangled strings. Derek was screaming something, but I'd stopped hearing him. I was floating now, above the track, above the crowd, above the chaos of sirens and crying and Mrs. Vance calling my name over and over like I could still answer. I could see everything. Derek dropped his knees in the spot where I'd been lying, his hands scrabbling at the track, his face a mess of something that might have been grief if it hadn't been so ugly. She can't be dead, he was saying. She can't be. She was begging for her medicine. That's what she was doing. She wanted her medicine. He saw the powder, the crushed white dust on the rubber track. He saw Sienna's footprint in it, the distinct pattern of those limited edition sneakers. And then he looked at Sienna. You, he said. She was backing away, shaking her head, her perfect ponytail swinging side to side. I didn't know. Derek, you didn't know either. Everyone thought she was faking. Even you said she was faking, you said. I didn't know she was dying. She was always dying. She told us 100 times, and we never listened. Derek hit her. I watched him do it, and I was supposed to feel something. Vengeance? Justice? But all I felt was tired. So tired. Like the last 10 years had finally caught up with me, and I just wanted to sleep. The paramedics stopped. One of them looked at his watch. I saw him shake his head at Mrs. Vance. Mrs. Vance collapsed. My body was covered with a sheet, and my hands were still clutching the scarf. Gray wool, ugly stitches, 6 weeks of pricked fingers and bleeding cuticles, and praying that maybe, if I made him something warm enough, he'd finally see me. He never saw me. And now he never would. The paramedics put me in the ambulance that I floated after them, because I didn't know where else to go. Through the windows, I could see Derek standing on the track, still, like a statue that had forgotten how to move. Sienna was on the ground crying, her face swelling, people gathering around them both. Nobody was gathering around me. I was already gone. The ambulance door closed, and I heard someone inside say something about long deceased and 30 minutes and no hope. They were wrong about the hope part. I'd stopped hoping about 6 years ago, when Derek gave his umbrella to Sienna and watched me walk home in the rain with my hand pressed to my chest. He didn't know I'd walked home in the rain that day because I couldn't afford an Uber. He didn't know I'd sat in my dorm bathroom for an hour, gasping into a towel so my roommate wouldn't hear. He didn't know the scarf I'd just dyed with was the same color as the sweater I'd been wearing that day, the only sweater I'd owned, which I washed in the sink because the dorm dryers were too expensive. He didn't know anything. And now he would spend the rest of his life finding out. As the ambulance pulled away, I looked back at the school, at the track, at the crowd of students who'd watched me die and done nothing. I was going to make sure they remembered. Here's Chapter 2, continuing directly from where we left off. Chapter 2, the journal. They took Derek to the station in the back of a cruiser and I drifted after him, not because I wanted to, but because I had nowhere else to go. My body was already in the morgue, cold and still, but something kept me tethered to him. Hate, maybe, or the last shred of curiosity about whether he'd ever feel a fraction of what I'd felt. The interrogation room was small, gray, windowless, a metal table, 2 chairs, a camera blinking red in the corner. Derek sat with his hands flat on the table, staring at nothing. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were red-rimmed. He hadn't cried yet. Not really. He was still in the shock phase, the part where your brain refuses to accept what your eyes have seen. Detective Morrison was a heavy-set man with a salt and pepper mustache and the tired look of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He slid a tablet across the table and pressed play. Tell me what you hear. The recording crackled. It was my phone, the one I dropped on the track. The microphone had picked up everything. Asterisk, you planning on sleeping through my class, Mitchell? Asterisk, Mrs. Hartwell's voice, sharp as glass. Mrs. Hartwell, I have medication. My own voice, thin and scared. Then the laughter. Sienna's giggle. Derek's cold command. Asterisk, quit the dramatics and run. Asterisk. Then the sound I'd never heard from the outside. The crunch of glass. The grind of rubber on pills. Asterisk, oh no, I didn't see you there. Asterisk, Sienna's voice, sweet and poisonous. And then my last breath, that rattling, wet sound that had come out of my throat as my heart gave up. Derek's face went white. He pushed back from the table, scraping the chair against the linoleum. Turn it off. Mr. Vance, we need to. I said turn it off. The detective paused the recording. That's your voice telling her to run. That's your girlfriend destroying her medication. And that's the sound of a young woman dying while you stood there and watched. Derek's hands were shaking. He pressed them to his temples. I didn't know she was really sick. She always said things. She complained about chest pain, but she never actually collapsed, I thought. You thought she was faking. Morrison's voice was flat, so you told her to run 5 laps in 90-degree heat with a congenital heart defect that was documented in her school file. A file your mother provided to the administration personally. Derek's head snapped up. My mom? She knew. Your mother gave the school a copy of Leah's medical records when she enrolled. She asked them to waive physical education requirements. Someone dropped the ball, Mr. Vance. And that someone is about to face a negligence lawsuit that will destroy their career. I floated in the corner, watching Derek's face cycle through confusion, horror, and then, finally, something that looked like guilt. It was beautiful, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. Can I see her? He asked. His voice cracked on the last word. Morrison studied him for a long moment. That's not usually allowed during an active investigation. Please. Derek's eyes were wet now. I need to see her. I need to say I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. I know. He slumped forward, his forehead hitting the table with a dull thud. I know it doesn't, but I have to try. The morgue was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and reminds you that bodies don't hold heat anymore. I'd been there for 3 hours, watching my own shell lie on a steel table, covered in a white sheet up to my chin, and my face was gray, my lips blue, and my hands were still curled around something. The scarf. I died clutching it. Derek walked in with his mother. Mrs. Vance looked 10 years older than she had that morning. Her hair was wild, her mascara smeared. She hadn't spoken to Derek since they left the station, but now she stopped in front of the table and turned to him with eyes that could have melted steel. "You did this," she said. "You and that girl and that monster of a teacher." "Mom." "Don't, I gave them the paperwork. I begged them to let her sit out. I called the principal myself, and you." She pointed a shaking finger at his chest. "You knew she was fragile. You knew she took pills every morning. You lived in the same house as her for 3 years, Derek. How could you not notice?" I blinked. Same house? Oh, right, in my new life, I'd been living with the Vances since my mother died. Mrs. Vance had been my legal guardian. That was a detail I hadn't thought about in years, but now it came flooding back. The extra bedroom. The meals she'd made sure I ate. The way she'd pushed Derek to be nicer, and the way he'd ignored her every time. Derek didn't answer his mother. He walked to the table and pulled back the sheet, just enough to see my face. I was staring at the ceiling, my eyes half open. Dead eyes look wrong. They're too still. He reached out and touched my cheek. His fingers were warm. I could feel the warmth even from where I was floating, like a faint echo. "Leah," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He moved his hand down to my chest, where my heart used to beat. Then he felt something in my pocket, the scarf. He pulled it out, the gray wool bunching in his fingers. He stared at it for a long moment. "You made this," he said. "You were trying to give it to me, weren't you? At the track." I said nothing. I couldn't. He pressed the scarf to his face and inhaled, I don't know what he smelled. Yarn. The faint trace of the lavender soap I'd used that morning. He held it there, breathing in, and when he lowered it, his cheeks were wet. "You told me you were making something," he said to my body. I didn't listen. I said it was stupid. It was stupid, but I'd done it anyway. Mrs. Vance took the scarf from him gently. "She gave this to me once, to show me. She said she was making it for your birthday. She was so proud of it, Derek. She'd never made anything before." Derek crumpled. He felt his knees beside the table, his hands gripping the edge, his face contorted. I didn't know she loved me that much. I thought she was just. Just what? Desperate? Pathetic? Mrs. Vance's voice cracked. She was a child who had no one. And you were the only person she trusted. And you broke her. Every single day. The funeral was 3 days later, but I didn't attend in person. Ghosts don't really need to RSVP, but I hovered over the chapel, watching from the rafters. The place was packed. Students who'd never spoken to me, teachers who'd forgotten my name, and a handful of people who actually cared. Emily, my roommate, was in the front row. She was crying openly, her face blotchy, clutching a leather-bound journal to her chest. I recognized it. That was my diary. The one I'd written in every night, the one I'd hidden under my mattress. How did she find it? The service dragged on. The minister said nice things about a girl he'd never met. Derek sat in the back, his eyes hollow, still clutching the scarf. Sienna wasn't there. She'd been released on bail, and her parents had kept her hidden away. Mrs. Hartwell wasn't there either. She was already being investigated by the state. And then Emily stood up. "Excuse me," she said, her voice ringing through the chapel. "I have something that needs to be read." She walked to the podium, opened the journal, and began to read. June 3, RD. Derek said I was pathetic today. He told me to stop following him around. I told him I just wanted to talk, and he laughed. He said, "What could you possibly have to say that I'd want to hear?" So I went back to my room and cried for an hour. Then I decided I'd make him something. Something he couldn't throw away. I'm going to knit him a scarf. The room went silent. Derek's face was ashen. August 20th, I finished the scarf today. It's ugly. The stitches are uneven and the ends are fraying, but I put all of me into it. Every thought, every prayer, every wish that he'd finally see me. I'm going to give it to him tomorrow. I'm so scared he'll laugh. Emily flipped a page. The last entry was written the night before she died. She took a shaky breath. "If I die tomorrow, I want someone to know that I tried and I tried so hard to be seen. And I don't blame Derek for not seeing me. I blame myself for believing he ever would, but I want him to keep the scarf. Maybe one day, when he's cold, he'll wrap it around himself and remember that someone, somewhere, loved him enough to bleed for him." Emily closed the journal. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want anyone to be punished. She just wanted him to know. And I thought you all should know too. Derek rose from his seat, swaying. He walked to the podium, his legs unsteady, and took the journal from Emily. He held it like it was made of glass. Then he turned to the congregation, his eyes wild. "Where did you get this?" he asked Emily. "It was in her locker. She told me where to find it if anything happened to her. She said she had a bad feeling." Derek clutched the journal to his chest. His lips moved silently, and I could almost read them. Asterisk she knew. She knew she was going to die. Asterisk. He stumbled out of the chapel, and I followed. That night, Derek sat in his childhood bedroom, the one he lived in since we both moved into the Vance house. He brought the scarf and the journal with him. He spread them out on his bed and read every entry, from the first one 7 years ago to the last one I'd written. I watched him cry. I watched him hit the wall with his fist until his knuckles bled. I watched him press the scarf to his face and whisper my name over and over like a prayer. And then, around midnight, he started talking to himself. "Leah," he said to the empty room, "I know you're here. I can feel you. You're cold. You're always cold." I drifted closer, curious. Could he actually sense me? "You used to sit on my bed and watch me sleep," he continued. "I never told you I knew, but I felt it, that cold spot on the mattress, that breath of air on my neck, that I thought you were just creepy. I thought you were obsessed." He laughed, but it was hollow. And I was right. You were obsessed, but I didn't understand that obsession wasn't about me, that IT was about survival. I was the only person who ever showed you kindness, even if it was just once, 10 years ago. You held onto that moment like a lifeline, and I let you drown. He looked down at the scarf in his hands. If I could go back, I would. He stopped. His face twisted, and he gripped his chest. What? He gasped. What is that? His eyes went wide. He doubled over, one hand braced against the bedpost, the other still clutching the scarf. His breathing grew ragged. It hurts, he wheezed. It feels like your heart is being squeezed, like someone's sitting on your chest, like you're dying and no one's coming to help. I knew that pain. I'd felt it 100 times, and now Derek was feeling it too, not because he had a heart condition he didn't, but because his body had finally caught up with his guilt, stress, grief. The slow, creeping breakdown of a person who can't carry the weight of what they've done. He collapsed onto the bed, gasping, reaching for his phone. His fingers trembled so badly he could barely dial 911. He managed to say help and then drop the phone. I floated over him, looking down at his pale, sweating face. Welcome to my world, I thought. Now you know what it feels like to be scared to death. The ambulance arrived. They took him to the hospital. The doctors said it was a panic attack, a severe one, triggered by acute psychological trauma. They gave him sedatives and told him to rest. He didn't rest. He lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, the scarf clutched to his chest like a shield. And when the nurse left the room, he spoke into the dark. I know you're still here. Leah, did I know you're watching? And I want you to know, I'm going to make it right. For you, I'm going to destroy everyone who hurt you, starting with Sienna. Starting with Hartwell. And then he paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. And then I'll find a way to bring you back. I don't care. If it's impossible, then I'll find a way. I shook my head, though he couldn't see me. You can't bring me back, Derek. That's not how this works. But he believed it. He believed it with every broken piece of his heart. And that belief was going to destroy him. Because I wasn't coming back. And the more he chased my ghost, the further he'd fall. I watched him close his eyes, the sedatives finally pulling him under. The scarf was still in his hand, gray and uneven and ugly. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever made. But it wasn't enough to save him. It never would be. And as I drifted out the window, I heard his last words before sleep cleaned him. Asterisk, I love you, Leah. I always did. I just didn't know it. Asterisk, too late. Always too late. Here's Chapter 3, continuing the story with the revenge arc and the first cracks in Derek's sanity. Chapter 3, The Reckoning. Derek checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice. I watched him sign the forms with a shaking hand, still pale from the panic attack, still clutching the scarf in his jacket pocket. He'd refused to let it go, even when the nurses tried to take it for safekeeping. It's all I have left of her, he'd said, and they'd stopped arguing. He didn't go home. He went straight to school. It was a Tuesday mid-afternoon. The halls were mostly empty. Classes were in session, but Derek knew where Sienna would be. She always hid in the third floor bathroom during fifth period, the one with the broken lock, because she liked to vape in there with her friends. He'd found her there a dozen times, and she'd always flashed him that perfect smile and said, "Come join me, babe." He pushed the door open. The bathroom was empty except for one stall, but he could see Sienna's feet under the door, those limited edition sneakers with the distinctive sole pattern. The same pattern that had ground my pills into dust. Sienna. His voice was flat, controlled. That was scarier than yelling. The feet shifted. "Derek, what are you? I thought you were in the hospital." I got out. The stall door opened slowly. Sienna's face appeared, carefully made up, her expression a practiced blend of concern and innocence. "Oh, baby, I was so worried about you when I heard what happened." "Don't." He stepped forward, and she stepped back, hitting the wall. "Don't you dare pretend you care." Her mask slipped for just a second, then she laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. "Derek, come on, I know you're upset, but you can't blame me for what happened. You were just as mean to her as I was. You're the one who told her to run. You're the one who called her pathetic. I was just..." "Just what?" "Following my lead." He was close now, towering over her, his hands were fists at his sides. "You crushed her medication, Sienna. You stepped on her hand and broke the bottle and ground the pills into the track. I saw you." "I didn't know they were real pills." Her voice pitched higher. "She always faked. Everyone said she faked. Even you said. Everyone was wrong." I floated in the corner, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. IT was like watching a car crash in slow motion. I knew what was coming, and part of me, the part that still remembered how much she'd hurt me, wanted to see it. Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a collapsible baton. I hadn't seen him pick it up, but he must have grabbed it from his car. He flicked it open with a practice snap. "Where did you get that?" Sienna's voice cracked. "Derek, put that down. You're scaring me." "Good." He stepped closer. "You should be scared." Leah was scared. When she was dying on that track, she was terrified. And you laughed. You laughed while she choked on her own blood. I didn't. She wasn't bleeding. Her heart stopped. That's worse than bleeding. He raised the baton. "Wait." Sienna threw her hands up. "Please, I'll tell you anything. I'll do anything. Just don't hurt me." Too late for that. The first swing caught her in the shoulder. She screamed, crumpling against the wall. The second swing hit her thigh, and I heard the crack of bone. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing, trying to crawl away. "Please, Derek, please, I did it for you. You used to complain about her all the time. You said she was like a leech. You said you wished she'd just disappear. I was trying to help you." Derek paused, the baton still raised. His face was a mask of rage, but something flickered behind his eyes. Doubt. Guilt. "I never asked you to kill her." "I didn't kill her. It wasn't an accident." He swung again, this time at her other leg, another crack, another scream. Sienna's legs lay at odd angles, broken in places they shouldn't break. She was going to need surgery. Multiple surgeries. She'd probably never walk properly again. And Derek stood over her, breathing hard, the baton dripping with blood that wasn't his. "Leah," he said to the empty air, "I did this for you. I hope you're watching." I was. And I felt nothing. That was the strangest part. I'd spent years dreaming of revenge, imagining Sienna and Derek and everyone else paying for what they'd done. But now that it was happening, now that I could see Sienna's ruined legs and hear her pitiful sobs, there was nothing inside me, and oh satisfaction, and oh joy. Just a hollow, empty space where my heart used to be. Maybe that was what death did. It burned away the anger along with everything else. They arrested Derek 2 hours later. He didn't run. He sat on the bathroom floor next to Sienna's unconscious body, the scarf in his hands, waiting for the police to find him. He looked almost peaceful, like he'd finally done something he'd been meaning to do for years. The charges were assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery, and attempted murder, but Mrs. Vance hired the best lawyers money could buy, and within a week, the charges were reduced. Self-defense, they argued. Sienna had attacked Derek first. There were witnesses. Well, paid witnesses, but still. Sienna's family tried to fight back, but Derek had something on them. I didn't know it at first, but I found out later. Sienna's father had been embezzling from his company for years. Derek had a private investigator dig it up. He threatened to hand the evidence to the feds unless the family dropped the charges and disappeared. They disappeared. Sienna ended up in a state-funded care facility, her legs in permanent braces, her family's reputation in ruins. She'd lost everything, her friends, her status, her ability to walk. All because she'd stepped on a bottle of pills that she thought were fake. Was it worth it? I didn't know anymore. Then Derek turned his attention to Mrs. Hartwell. This time, he didn't use violence, he used the system. He hired the same PI to dig through her history, and what they found was a goldmine. Years of falsified grades, kickbacks from textbook publishers, and most damning, a pattern of singling out students from low-income backgrounds and failing them for minor infractions. She'd done it to a dozen kids before me. I was just the one who died. The state board launched an investigation. Teachers came forward with stories. Former students gave testimony. Within a month, Mrs. Hartwell was stripped of her license, fired from the school, and facing criminal charges for negligence that could put her in prison for up to 5 years. She tried to fight it. She went on local news, crying about how she'd only been trying to maintain discipline. But the recording of her voice on my phone, that cold, unfeeling tone, played on every major network. Public opinion turned against her overnight. Her own family disowned her. Last I heard, she was living in a motel on the outskirts of town, waiting for her trial date, her career and reputation in ashes. Derek had done all of that. He dismantled everyone who'd hurt me, piece by piece, using every resource he had. And he still wasn't satisfied. Because Derek had started seeing things. It began small, a flicker in the corner of his eye, a cold draft in a warm room. Then it grew. He started seeing me in reflections, just for a second, before I vanished. He'd catch glimpses of a girl in a white dress standing at the end of the hall, and when he turned, no one was there. The doctor said it was PTSD. His mother begged him to get help, but Derek refused. He said he didn't want the visions to stop because they were the only way he could still be with me. One night, I floated into his bedroom while he was lying awake, staring at the ceiling. He was holding the scarf to his chest, running his fingers over the uneven stitches. "Leah," he whispered, "I know you're here. I can feel you. You're cold, like you always were." I drifted closer, curious. Could he really sense me? "I used to think you were weak," he continued. "I used to think you were pathetic for following me around, for always being there whenever I turned around. But you weren't weak. You were brave. You stayed, even when I was cruel. You loved me, even when I didn't deserve it." He sat up abruptly, looking around the dark room. "Where are you? I know you're watching. Please, show yourself. Let me see you. Just once." I hovered in front of him, an arm's length away. He couldn't see me, not really, but I could see the desperation in his eyes, the hope, the fear. I reached out a translucent hand and touched his cheek. He flinched, gasping. "Leah?" The cold. He felt the cold. I'd learned that much. When I concentrated, I could make my presence known. A chill in the air, a brush of wind, a subtle pressure. It was all I had left. "Please," he said again, his voice breaking. "Please don't go." But I was already pulling back. I didn't want to be near him. Every time I got close, I felt the echo of my old feelings, the desperate love, the crushing disappointment, the bitter heartbreak. It was too much that I needed space. I drifted to the window and looked out at the moonlit street. Behind me, Derek started crying again. "I'm sorry. I know I don't deserve to see you. I know I don't deserve anything, but I'll do whatever it takes. I'll find a way to bring you back. I swear it." I turned to look at him. His face was streaked with tears, his eyes red and swollen. He looked broken. Completely, irreparably broken. And for the first time since I died, I felt something other than bitterness. It wasn't love. It wasn't forgiveness. It was pity. Derek had destroyed everyone who'd hurt me. He'd sacrificed his future, his freedom, his sanity. And for what? I was still dead. I was still gone. All he'd done was drag himself down with the rest of them. "Don't," I said, though he couldn't hear me. "Don't keep fighting for me. I'm not worth it." But he kept fighting. And his body kept breaking. 3 weeks after the attack on Sienna, Derek collapsed again. This time, it wasn't a panic attack. It was his heart. He was in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of whiskey, when he suddenly dropped the bottle and clutched his chest. I watched him fall to his knees, his face gray, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "Mom," he wheezed, reaching for his phone. "Call 911. His mother found him on the floor. The ambulance came. The doctors ran tests. The diagnosis was stress-induced cardiomyopathy, broken heart syndrome. They said it was rare. They said it was usually triggered by extreme emotional trauma. They said he needed to rest, to stop torturing himself, to let go of the guilt. Derek laughed at that. Let go? How am I supposed to let go? She was everything, and I killed her. I was in the corner of his hospital room, watching. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The golden boy confidence was gone. In its place was a hollow shell, haunted by ghosts he couldn't shake. That night, he had a dream. I saw it in the way his eyelids fluttered, the way his lips moved. He was dreaming of me. But in his dream, I wasn't angry. I wasn't vengeful. I was just there. Leah, he said in his sleep, can you forgive me? I leaned close, so close I could almost feel his breath. I don't know, I whispered into his ear. Can you forgive yourself? He woke up screaming. The doctors kept him for observation. They put him on medication and ordered psychological evaluation. He was diagnosed with severe depression, anxiety, and borderline personality disorder. They wanted to keep him inpatient, but Mrs. Vance fought against it. She couldn't bear to have her son in a psych ward. So he went home with a prescription for antidepressants and a warning to avoid stress. He ignored the warning. He started spending every night on the track, at the spot where I died. He'd lie there, staring at the stars, the scarf draped over his face. Sometimes he'd talk to me. Sometimes he'd just cry. And I'd sit beside him, invisible, wondering why I couldn't bring myself to leave. I'm not going to stop, he said one night, his voice muffled by the wall. I'm not going to stop until you come back, even if it takes forever. I reached out and brushed my hand against his cheek. He shivered, but he smiled. Good night, Leah, he whispered. I'll see you in the morning. I didn't answer, but I stayed. I always stayed. Chapter 4, The Wind. They put Derek in a psychiatric facility 3 weeks after his second collapse. I watched them wheel him through the automatic doors, his wrists bandaged, his eyes glassy. He tried to kill himself in the bathroom of his childhood home, slit his wrists with a razor blade, just like I'd done in the original story, but his mother found him in time. She always found him in time. Room 304, the nurse said, pushing his wheelchair down the corridor. Behavioral health unit. He'll be on constant observation. Mrs. Vance walked behind, her face a ruin of grief and exhaustion. She'd aged 20 years in 2 months. Her designer clothes hung loose on her frame. Her hair was streaked with gray that hadn't been there before. She'd lost her daughter-in-law and her son in the same afternoon, and she was still standing, barely. The room was small, with padded walls and a narrow BED, and windows, and sharp edges. Derek sat on the mattress, staring at nothing, the scarf still clutched in his hands. He hadn't let go of it during the ambulance ride, the ER visit, or the transfer to the psych ward. IT was like the thing had fused to his skin. Leah, he whispered to the empty air. Are you still here? I'd never left. I floated in the corner, watching him deteriorate. His face was sunken, his eyes dark-circled, his hands trembling. The golden boy was gone. In his place was a husk, hollowed out by guilt and grief. Leah, please, he said again, louder this time. I need to know you're here. I need to know I'm not alone. I drifted closer, hovering inches from his face. He couldn't see me, but he could feel the cold. I'd learned that much. When I concentrated, I could make myself known, a chill in the air. A brush against his skin, but a whisper of something that might have been my voice. He shivered. I feel you. You're right here, aren't you? I reached out and touched his cheek. He closed his eyes, tears leaking from the corners. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Did I know I don't deserve to see you? Did I know I don't deserve anything? But I just need to tell you, I've always had this. From the beginning. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn card. IT was laminated, yellowed with age. The corners bent. I recognized it instantly. It was the friendship card I'd given him 10 years ago, after he'd chased away that stray dog. The front read, thank you for being my hero. Inside, in my child's handwriting, one day I'll repay you, I promise. There was a crude drawing of a dog with a smiley face. I'd been 7. He'd been 9. You kept that, I whispered, even though he couldn't hear me. I kept it, he said, as if he had. I kept it all these years, and I never threw it away, and I never could. Every time I was mean to you, I'd go home and look at this card and feel like garbage. But I was too proud to apologize, too proud to admit I cared. And then, his voice cracked. And then it was too late. I stared at the card. All those years, I thought he saw me as nothing, annoying, pathetic to leech, but he'd kept the card. He'd kept the evidence that once, briefly, he'd seen me as someone worth protecting. You had a funny way of showing it, I said, but there was no venom in my voice, just exhaustion. He didn't hear me, but he pressed the card to his chest, next to the scarf. I'm going to find a way to bring you back, he said. I don't care how long it takes. I'll sell my soul if I have to. That wasn't going to happen, but the desperation in his voice was real. He wasn't just grieving. He was drowning. The doctors tried everything, antidepressants, therapy, group sessions, nothing worked. Derek refused to engage, refused to talk, refused to let go of the scarf and the card. He spent his days staring at the wall, whispering my name, waiting for something that would never come. And then one night, something did come. I was drifting near the window when I felt it, a tug, like someone was pulling me toward the corner of the room that I turned, and there she was. A woman in white, shimmering and translucent, her face kind but ancient. She wasn't a ghost. She was something else, something older. You've been here too long, she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It resonated inside my skull, like a thought that wasn't mine. Your purpose is fulfilled. What purpose? To make him see, and he has seen. She gestured toward Derek, who was asleep now, the scarf and card clutched to his chest. He understands what he lost. He will carry that understanding for the rest of his life. Your work is done. Then why can't I leave? She smiled, a sad, knowing expression. Because you haven't forgiven him. Not truly. The anger may be gone, but the wound is still open. You're tethered to him by that wound. I looked at Derek. He was crying in his sleep, his face twisted with sorrow. The scarf was pressed against his mouth, muffling his sobs. I don't want to forgive him, I said. He doesn't deserve it. Perhaps not, she agreed. But you don't deserve to be trapped here either. The dead move on. The living stay behind. You're caught in between because you're still fighting a battle you've already won. I didn't know what to say to that. She reached out a hand, palm up, waiting. The choice is yours. You can stay here, watching him destroy himself, feeling nothing but pity and exhaustion, or you can let go, forgive him, forgive yourself, and finally be free. I looked at her hand. It was warm, despite being spectral. I could feel the heat radiating from it. What happens if I take it? You move on, wherever that takes you. I turned back to Derek. He was murmuring in his sleep, fragments of sentences I couldn't quite catch. I'm sorry and come back and I love you. The same things he'd been saying for weeks. He'd been cruel, he'd been callous, he'd stood by while I died, and he'd never once apologized while I was alive. But he was apologizing now, every single day, with a ferocity that bordered on self-destruction. Was it enough? I didn't know, but I was tired, tired of being angry, of being bitter, of being dead but not gone, and I wanted to sleep. I wanted to stop existing. I wanted to be the wind, free and untethered, blowing wherever the world took me. She was right, I said to Derek's sleeping form. I won. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Leah? I reached out and touched his forehead, and my fingers were cold, but I concentrated, and for just a moment, I made them warm like a hand on fevered skin. Warm like the touch he should have given me all those years ago. Goodbye, Derek, I whispered. He sat up, gasping, clutching the scarf. Leah? Leah, wait, where are you going? But I was already pulling back, floating toward the woman in white. I took her hand. The warmth spread up my arm, through my chest, into every part of me that had been cold since the day I died. It didn't hurt. It felt like coming home. Good girl, she said. Now rest. I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I was somewhere else, somewhere beautiful, a field of wildflowers under a soft blue sky. The sun was warm on my face, and my chest was full. Full of air, full of light, full of a rhythm I'd almost forgotten. My heart, it was beating, steady and strong. I touched my chest. There was no pain, noche, no fear. I looked down at myself. I was wearing a white dress, simple and clean. My hair was loose around my shoulders. I was whole. And I was alive. What the? I started, but a voice cut me off. Not yet, sweetheart. Not quite. I turned. The woman in white was there, but she looked different now. Her features were softer, younger. She looked familiar, though I couldn't place her. Who are you? I'm your mother, silly. She smiled, and suddenly I saw it. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her smile. It was Mom. My mom, who died when I was 12. Mom, my voice cracked. How? I've been watching you.